Let's talk about alcohol. It's everywhere, right? At celebrations, after a long week, it's just part of our culture. It's so normal that we almost never stop and ask the really basic question, what is this stuff actually doing to our bodies?
And I mean, this is a seriously old tradition. We've got evidence of people drinking alcohol for at least 7,000 years. So, what really happens on the inside? From that first warm buzz to the long-term effects, well, that's exactly the journey we're about to take.
But before we dive into all the biology, I think it's important to get a sense of just how long alcohol has been a part of the human story. I mean, this is not some new thing. It's ancient.
We are talking about a habit that is older than most of recorded history. Seriously, from ancient China to Egypt and pretty much everywhere else, people have been making and drinking alcohol for millennia. It is just deeply, deeply woven into who we are.
Okay, so enough of the history lesson. Let's make this personal. What happens inside your body when you have a drink? We're going to follow it, step by step.
First, we need to be on the same page about what we're measuring. You'll hear the term unit a lot. 1 unit is basically 10 milliliters of pure alcohol. Now, what does that mean in the real world? Well, it's the amount your body can handle in about an hour. Think of it as roughly half a pint of beer, or a small glass of wine, or a single shot of spirits.
Okay, so here's how a night of drinking can play out, unit by unit. After 1 or 2, you feel good, right? That's the social buzz. Your heart beats a little faster, you feel warm, chatty. But push it to 4 to 6 units, and suddenly the part of your brain that makes smart decisions starts to go offline. Your reactions get sluggish. By 8 or 9 units, you're losing control. Your speech is slurring, your vision is blurry. And if you get to 12 or more units, well, you are squarely in the danger zone for alcohol poisoning. That's when your body's most basic functions, like breathing, can literally start to shut down.
And these immediate effects, they're not just happening inside your body. Get this, more than 1 in every 10 visits to the emergency room are related to alcohol. Think about that for a second. That is a huge number.
And beyond the hospital, the immediate problems just ripple outwards. We're talking a huge link to violent crime, making risky decisions you wouldn't normally make, or even just simple stuff like losing your phone or your wallet. It can even mess with your job or your studies.
So that's what can happen in a single session. But what about when it becomes a pattern over months or years? Well, the cumulative damage is where the story gets a lot more serious.
Let's start with maybe the biggest risk of all, cancer. The science on this is just crystal clear. Long-term, consistent drinking is directly linked to a whole host of cancers, from your liver and bowel all the way up to your mouth and throat.
And this next point is absolutely crucial to understand. The International Agency for Research on Cancer has an official classification for things that cause cancer. Alcohol is in Group 1. That's not a maybe or a potential risk. It is the highest possible risk category. To put that in perspective, alcohol is in the exact same danger category as asbestos, radiation, and tobacco.
And the danger doesn't stop with cancer. The long-term damage hits your whole system. We're looking at a much higher risk of things like heart disease and stroke, not to mention liver failure. It can cause permanent brain damage, mess with your mental health, weaken your immune system. It can even affect your fertility.
Now, with all of these risks on the table, it's really important that we're clear on the language experts use. You'll hear 2 terms thrown around a lot, abuse and addiction. And you know what? They don't actually mean the same thing.
So here's the key difference. Alcohol abuse is a pattern of drinking way too much. But, and this is the crucial part, it's still technically under your control. Alcohol use disorder, which is the medical term for addiction, is when you've lost that control. It's the point where you can't stop, and you often get physical withdrawal symptoms if you try.
All right, we've looked at the immediate effects, we've looked at the really scary long-term risks, and all of this leads to the one question that pretty much everyone wants to know the answer to.
So yeah, the big question is, what's the limit? How much is too much? You know, what is a genuinely safe amount of alcohol to drink? Seems like a fair thing to ask, right?
Well, here is the answer from the World Health Organization, basically the highest authority there is on this, and they don't mince words. When it comes to alcohol consumption, there is no safe amount that does not affect health, period.
So let's be really clear about what that means. The research shows that the risk of diseases like cancer starts with the very first drop. There's no magic line you can stay under to be totally safe. The risk just goes up with every single drink you have.
Now, this is where things get a little complicated.
right? Because you've got that incredibly stark warning from the WHO, but then you have national guidelines, like this one from the UK, that suggest keeping it under 14 units a week. So what gives? Well, these guidelines aren't saying that 14 units is safe. They're basically a lower risk suggestion, an attempt to balance the scientific facts with social reality.
And that really leaves us with the final, massive question. On one hand, you've got this ancient, beloved social tradition. On the other, you have this huge, undeniable mountain of scientific evidence showing it's a risk. So how do we, as people, as a society, balance those two things? That's really the conversation that all this evidence forces us to have.